Hello everyone, Storm101 here. Today we'll be having an update on multiple severe weather risk days. For today, it's going to be happening across portions of southeastern Kansas, northeastern Oklahoma, northern Arkansas, even into portions of Missouri. And that could continue a little bit eastward as the day goes on, maybe in the parts of the lower Ohio Valley. Then moves further east tomorrow. There's going to be an elevated risk for some strong severe storms across parts of the mid-Atlantic in the northeast. And it focuses back to portions of the plains across portions of Nebraska, northern Kansas, southwestern Iowa, northwestern Missouri by Tuesday, and that could extend into portions of the lower Ohio Valley by Wednesday. Before you get on start this video, if you guys like weather related content, you can subscribe to my channel. We do stuff here all the time on this channel. Plus, we have more updates on some of these severe weather setups over the next couple days, so definitely stay tuned for more updates as well. We're going to get started with the watch warning advisory display. It's currently about noon around my time, and we already got severe storms ongoing out there earlier this morning across portions of southeastern Kansas, southwestern Missouri, northeastern Oklahoma, and northwestern Arkansas. That's where we have a severe thunderstorm watch. That's what those pink boxes are. And there's these little yellow boxes here, and that indicate what that means. Those are severe thunderstorm warnings out there. Meanwhile, the rest of the country, you know what? We're mostly quiet across the rest of the country. Let's talk about the event earlier this week here. We had a big derecho across anywhere from northeastern Nebraska all the way up into portions of Minnesota. Look at those significant wind reports. Those are 52 significant wind reports. I think that's the second highest significant wind reports in a given day on record. So it was definitely kind of a historic event across some of these areas in here, and unfortunately, it's caused a lot of damage out there as well. The highest wind gusts I've heard that was recorded, I think it was 107 miles per hour, and that's quite impressive from those cluster thunderstorms. What's also interesting along these thunderstorms was a lot of dust was being picked up. That's actually what a haboob. That's a haboob. That's when you get a lot of dust that picks up ahead of those main cluster thunderstorms, and it's kind of like a dust storm just out ahead of those cluster thunderstorms. That's something you see like out in the portions of almost said Arkansas, Arizona, New Mexico, even the portions of Nevada, and also Utah as well. Those are haboobs are more common down there than it is up here. So it was a very interesting event overall. We also had a couple significant tornadoes out there as well, unfortunately. All right, so we got that out of the way. Let's talk about the SPC outlook for today. Getting enhanced risk for severe weather for northeastern Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, most of southern Missouri, and most of northern Arkansas, with a slight risk that does extend into portions of the Tennessee Valley, the Lower Ohio Valley, as well, and even as far south as the Texarkana region as well. There's even a slight risk for severe weather in northeastern Oregon, southeastern Washington, and portions of north central Idaho as well, which is very interesting. Tornado risk overall, you know what? It's going to be very limited out there. Not a whole lot of wind shear to work with, although there is a decent amount of wind shear ongoing in the southeast central part of Kansas, but some of those numbers are going to decrease as the day goes on. So a lot of these storms here will be going into a less favorable environment, which we'll talk about. Take a look into that in a little bit. Damage winds would be one of the main threats. It's also hatched as well. It's where we could see the potential for significant damage winds. Large hail will also be a possibility. Some of it could also be very large out there as well. Day 2, which is tomorrow, the severe weather risk shifts further to the east for portions of the northeast and mid-Atlantic, where we do have an enhanced risk for most of eastern New York, eastern Pennsylvania, western New Jersey, central Maryland, portions of Delaware, and parts of northern Virginia. There's a 5% tornado risk out there, but really the main threat is going to be damaging straight line winds. This is where we're going to see multiple cluster thunderstorms roll over some of these areas. And really the main threat with those, and again, it's going to be damaging winds. They can also produce some hail out there as well. I don't think hail is going to be a huge issue out there. Then on day 3, which is Tuesday, got a slight risk for severe weather for southern Nebraska, northern Kansas, northwestern Missouri, and southwestern Iowa. There's no hatch area, but really the main threats on this day here is going to be damaged winds and hail. There may be a very low tornado risk. Now, day 4, it says potential too low, but I do disagree with that, which we'll talk a little bit more about day 4, the reason why I disagree here later in the video. But on day 5, which is Thursday, got a slight risk for severe weather for eastern South Dakota, northeastern Nebraska, northern Iowa, the southern half of Minnesota, the northern half of Wisconsin, and portions of upper Michigan. Then on day 6, which is Friday, got a slight risk of severe weather from northeastern Texas all the way up into central Michigan. This covers a lot of area. If you actually look down here at the bottom here, you'll notice here that it covers 252,000 square miles. That's a lot of real estate. And the population of how many people are under this slight risk, 38 million people. So it's a very large 15% risk area, which we'll talk more about day 5 and 6 in a later video because the video fortunately would be a little bit too long, which I know some of you guys probably do not like very long videos. So let's talk about the current environment, what's going on out there for today. And we'll start off with surface-based Cape. And you know what? There's a lot of instability out there, especially in eastern Oklahoma. Most of Arkansas has got a lot of instability out there where you got widespread values from 4,500 to 5,500 out there. And there's also a lot of instability going on in southeastern Missouri. So we'll have to wait and see in southeastern Missouri and see if this Mexico convective system will try to re-intensify as it gets into a little bit more of a favorable environment there for some strong severe storms. If you check out bulk shear though, now right now most of your bulk shear is up in portions of southwestern Missouri and eastern Kansas, even into northeastern Oklahoma. But where these storms are going, you know, really the bulk shear really backs off. So really conditions as you get farther to the east and south, it becomes less favorable for severe weather. You will need at least some wind shear to get some strong severe storms going, especially if it's going to be like an organized cluster. So that's going to be another parameter to watch for and see what kind of happens there. If we check out, let's see, downdraft Cape, that's an ingredient for damage winds. You know what? You got some favorable numbers out there, especially out ahead of this Mexico convective system in central Missouri. That's going to run into some of those more favorable downdraft Cape values. Low level lap rates is another way to look into the damage wind risk. You do have some elevated numbers out there. At least a 7 would be favorable. Mid-level lap rates is another ingredient to at least look into the hail potential, which the values right now are not very elevated, at least for now. But those numbers are beginning to increase over some of those areas. Which here's the large hail parameter. There's some pretty elevated numbers across parts of central Kansas out there. As high as a 16 out there, which is, then again, it's pretty elevated out there, so there could be some large hail for some of these storms. And storative velocity values for the tornado potential. Some of the highest numbers are found in central and eastern Kansas, but where these storms are going, once again, it's in a less favorable environment for tornadoes. Which, if you do check out the significant tornado parameters, it's only as high as a 1. So conditions are favorable for tornadoes, but I don't think it's going to be a very high risk or anything. I think the main concern for these storms are going to be damaged winds and large hail out there, especially given by the elevated lap rates and the instability values. Even downdraft Cape values too will help support that threat. And here's the superset composite here. Then again, where you have those greatest wind shear values is where your greatest superset composite parameters are. So I think the greatest tornado risk, at least for the short term anyway, is probably going to be found in the southeastern part of Kansas. So we have to keep an eye on the storms, which you know is here on radar. They are discreet out there. So that's another thing to watch for, at least in the short term anyway. These storms here will continue to move to the southeast as the day goes on. Let's check out the HER model for the rest of the day. You can see here how some of those discrete storms do go on. And really, this has not been doing a great job out there at all, really. It's been going way too slow with this system here. And you know what? The HER has a tendency to be moving too slow, especially with the mesoscale convective system. So I'll take that as a grain of salt there. But you do notice here, so we get later in the day here, some discrete storms do try to develop in northeastern Oklahoma and northwestern Arkansas. And I think that's the area to really pay attention to for that potential for some large hail out there. So that's something to watch for. If they do begin to cluster up, your damage wind threat really begins to ramp up as well. So, and oh yeah, lastly, let's check out the significant Torah parameters. You can see here, numbers out there are just not very elevated out there. There are some areas of well over a 1, but they're generally in an isolated area. So it's not going to be a huge risk out there or anything like that. So overall, southwestern Missouri, northern Arkansas, northeastern Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas. Really, the main threats are going to be damage winds, large, and there could be a couple spin up tornadoes or two. I cannot rule that out. But really, I think damage winds and hail could be the main concern. So definitely stay weather aware later today, especially if you get under severe thunderstorm warning. Either if it's going to be the damaging straight line winds, or it's going to be that very large hail potential as well. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that as the day kind of goes on. So now we move further to the east. Let's talk about tomorrow on Monday. And that's going to be over portions of the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic. So really about 18Z, so you're getting close to peak time heating. The HERM model does indicate a big cluster of thunderstorms moving across parts of central New York and Pennsylvania. It's a pretty disorganized cluster, but I do think later in the day here, they should begin to get a little bit better organized out there. You also know some new storms do form over portions of Maryland, even the portions of northern Delaware, and possibly into northern Virginia. If these storms begin to cluster up, that really increases your risk for damage winds, which that's really the primary concern with these storms here. And also notice here at the same time here, there's a lot of discrete storms that form out ahead of it, but a lot of these are kind of discrete, or I meant to say, um, not very organized storms. So you don't really have to worry too much about supercells out there because windshear values are going to stay on the lower end side for tomorrow. But at the same time, with these storms forming out ahead of the main squall line, they can help make the atmosphere a little bit more stable. So there is some absurdity here, but for what I've seen in the past couple years in the Northeast, you can't really underestimate severe weather setups in the Northeast. Most of Larry, 75% of the time they overperform. So it's going to be hard to kind of underestimate with severe weather setups like these because they do tend to be underestimated out there as well. So it's definitely going to be something to watch. But let's do check out the significant torque parameters. You can see here 20Z, not the best, numbers. If we do get a sounding in Central Virginia, you notice here the holograph is not very impressive. Sorry, the felicity values are not great. Now, surface speedscape is 55, which you're getting deeper to the overnight hours, so these instability values will begin to back off. But your mixed cape is still quite elevated up as high as 1800, so that'll be help to support that severe weather risk out there as well. But you notice here, a lot of these higher numbers out there does have slight contamination with them. So it's going to be hard to get actually a good sounding out here. Maybe if we try to get one in central New Jersey. Yeah, this is a little bit more of an accurate sounding here to kind of look at. You can see here, the photograph is pretty small out there. And also at the same time here, sorry, the felicity values really, it's just not the best out there if you want tornadoes. Really, story to felicity values are really lacking out there. Now, surface basescape is pretty elevated, 2500. Mixed layer is up close to 1400. Downdraft cape is elevated up to 729, which could be favorable for some damage winds. But I think one of the key things is going to be the low lap rates. Low lap rates could be pretty elevated for that potential for some damaging straight line winds. So really overall, I think damaging straight line winds is going to be the main threat. There could be some hail with some of these storms, and I think the tornado threat overall is going to stay pretty low out there as well. There's a chance they may drop that 5% tornado risk out there. We'll have to wait and see. I know the Hurricane Sam is a little bit more aggressive than the Hermal, and I've kind of find that a little bit interesting as well. So that's probably part of the reason why there's a 5% risk area out there. So then again, we'll have to wait and see where malls kind of trend next as we get new model runs in as the day goes on today, even into tomorrow morning as well. So now we focus back into portions of Nebraska and Kansas by Tuesday. And you notice here, plenty of instability out there. You got instability values anywhere from 3 to about around 4,000 joules per kilogram. So there's a lot of instability in place. If I do look into the upper level winds, like 500 millibars, there's not really much way of strong winds out there. So those wind shear values are really not going to be there. Now, 850 millibars is a little bit better, but still, then again, there's not your wind shear values are not going to be the best out there, at least earlier in the day. Here's your supersonic composite here. You can see there are some higher numbers back down to portions of Kansas and Oklahoma, but I do believe a lot of that is cap. Plus, there's not really a mechanism to really make those storms form like either like an outflow boundary or a cold front or a warm front. There's just not really much anything to get these storms to get going down there. There will be a weak warm front setting up in the parts of Nebraska into southwestern Iowa, and that's what's going to help keep these storms going is that weak warm front. So at least there's something to ignite these storms out there, and that's the weak warm front that'll be setting up out there. Which if you do look into the dew point here, you can see here, here's your weak warm front. I'm right here. It's a little bit up north, but you also do have this little dry line or cold front that sets up out here, so that will also help keep these. That can also help ignite some of those storms to develop out there as well. But let's go back to surface-based capering. Let's get a sounding here along the Nebraska and Kansas border and see what we get out of this, or what it suggests. Now, as we do get into the overnight hours, the wind shear values will begin to increase. What you can see here in this case here, wind shear values are just pretty much non-existent at this point. Below 100, it's very weak. Hodograph is not good. Now, plenty of instability, and lap rates are pretty good. Downdraft cape is pretty good. So really, so there's a damage wind and hail risk within this area, but the tornado risk is just pretty much zero. Even though there's some wind direction of height out there, which could lead to some rotating updrafts, those winds are not very strong at all. So I don't really see a tornado risk out there. However, as we do get into the overnight hours, so about 9Z, this is about around the middle of the night. If you do check out 850 millibar winds, they are getting stronger out there. The upper level winds are getting a little bit stronger. That's going to help increase those wind shear values. If we go back to superset composite here, the numbers are not as elevated like they were earlier. But if we do get a sounding out there, now there is a little bit of cyan out there, but I don't think it's going to be enough to really affect thunderstorm development. I mean, negative 26, that's almost like nothing for cyan. You can see here, now interestingly enough, there's not a whole lot of wind shear. I think this is a little bit to the west where some of the better wind shear values are, which is but yeah, a little bit further to the east out there. So the Lova jet and the variable instability values are a little bit displaced. So there is some uncertainty as we do get into Tuesday here, but we'll still watch it regardless here. I still think regardless there, if there's not a whole lot of wind shear out there, there's still, I think, a damage wind and large hail risk out there. I think they're going to maintain that slight risk, at least for now. Unless wind shear values begin to increase, there could be an enhanced risk upgrade, but I think for right now they're going to maintain that slight risk. And the last day that we're going to be talking about is Wednesday, and Wednesday is becoming to look a little bit interesting. And I've talked about this for the past couple days on my Twitter over some of these areas. And this is the supersonic composite here from NAM. Now, I think this is a bit too aggressive with the NAM, but you got supersonic composite values up as high as a 16 or a 26. That's quite high. Haven't seen a number that high from supersonic composite parameter in a long time. But even though it's a little bit overdone here, if we do check out some of the other model guidance, like the GFS model, this is the latest 12Z run. Even though it's not as nearly as high as the NAM model, there's still some good supersonic composite parameter values out there. Even if we check out the GFS ensembles for Wednesday, there's a really good mean out there. Now, this is the 6Z run, not the 12Z run. We can check out and see if the 12Z run is out of range, which actually it is. So perfect. And you know what? Even with the latest 12Z run, it's pretty much the same. So there's a good agreement, at least with the NAM, GFS, and even the GFS ensembles. We'll talk a little bit more about the European model in a little bit, but let's get a little bit more deeper to the severe weather setup using the NAM in the GFS. So let's try to get a little bit more of an accurate sounding here. It's actually going to be really hard to do with something like this. Actually, let's not get a sounding from the NAM for now, and let's just go for the other ingredients. So 850 millbar winds. So there is a little bit of a low jet. It's not very strong, but this is a pretty decent low jet here for this time of year, especially around peak time heating. If we do check out some of the other ingredients, now one of the more important things is the 500 millibar winds. This is catching my attention because this is on a northwest flow aloft, and when you have a setup like this time of year, sometimes this could lead to a Mexico convective system, or in some cases a derecho. Now I can't say if there's going to be a derecho threat here or not, but the possibility could be there. It might be there. It's hard to say if the derecho potential is there or not. You have to wait and see wherever like the HER model or the highest name gets in range. Some of the convection allowing models out there to indicate that potential threat. But really, overall, if I look over some of these ingredients here, you got a nice northwest wind flow, and that goes over a pretty unstable atmosphere. Now, there are some areas where it's a little bit duller, like in central Indiana, not as high. But if you get into southwestern Kentucky, southern Illinois, into southern Missouri, there are instability values between the 4 to 5,000 range. That's quite elevated. And derechos like instability values like this. They do. And if we do check out some other things like low evaporates, which can help increase the damage wind risk, you know what? You got some elevated low evaporates values out there that can be favorable. And the middle of evaporates also looks pretty good out there as well. So this is really a setup to really pay attention to over the next couple of days, especially if models trend towards the NAM solution. Because then again, I think the NAM is too aggressive here. But even wherever I check for one of the soundings here, it's actually got a lot of wind shear, and it's kind of a little bit concerning because with setups like these, especially a northwest flow, there's usually not a whole lot of wind shear. But in this case here, from the NAM and some of the other models, they actually show a lot of wind shear in place. So it's definitely going to be an interesting setup to watch. Also, if you do check out dew points, low 70s is pretty good for some big cluster thunderstorms out there as well. You also notice the lift index could be as high as a -10 or as low, more technically speaking. So let's check out the GFS well here. Now, we'll check out some soundings here for the GFS here because I think it's a little bit more accurate. So let's get a sounding near Louisville, Kentucky. While that loads in, just looking the map overall, you can see here some elevated supersonic composite parameters out there. The Louisville jet, you know what? In this run here from the GFS, it actually has got a stronger Louisville jet out there, well over 50 knots. But the northwest wind flow out there, it actually looks pretty good. You can see here that northwest wind flow up as high as 65 to 70 knots in some places, so that's pretty good. Dew points, it's also pretty favorable out there too. Now, surface-based cape, there's quite a bit of cape out there as well. Even though it's lower than the NAM model, it's still supportive. There are some areas where there's higher cyanide values. You can see here, southwestern Kentucky, -153 thunderstorms can have a hard time developing. But if you're a little bit closer to the frontier, which is where cluster thunderstorms like to form along, um, there's lower cyanide values out there. So that's going to be a little bit of an uncertainty here is where this warm front or some type of front is going to kind of set up because that's where cluster thunderstorms like to form along is fronts like that. So here's the GFS model. This is over Louisville. Can change. Keep in mind that. You can see here it's got a pretty good hodograph out there, and it's also got some good wind shear values. This is actually better than its previous run when it comes to wind shear values. If the models are trending higher with wind shear values, that's a little bit concerning out there. Now, when it comes to instability, surface base is 2500. Mixed layer cape is 2400, which is pretty good. Low evaporates in this case here, it's not good. However, mid-level evaporates can help keep those storms going. Downdraft cape is up to 789, which could be favorable for damage winds. So really, overall, with this sounding here, Seems to be favorable for some damaging winds, even some hail, even the possibility for tornadoes could be there as well. It's going to be an interesting day to watch overall. Oh yeah, let's check out the European model real quick before we end the video. So 6 o'clock Wednesday, I think it's in Eastern time, at least I think anyway. So around peak time heating, there are some thunderstorms out there, but if you do check out those upper level winds, 500 millibars, change the color here real quick so you guys could see better. You know what? You got a pretty good northwest wind out there aloft, 500 millibars. Now 850 millibar winds, still low of a jet. You know what? You got some good winds out there as well. And then the Cape, not as high as some of the other models, but you know what? Still's got a pretty good environment there for some severe weather. So really, overall, for Wednesday severe weather setup, I'll definitely have to keep an eye on eastern Missouri, uh, southern Illinois, southern Indiana, into portions of central and western Kentucky. Which this is a map that I've made a couple days ago. I don't plan on to make too many changes here, but I'll make changes if it's necessary. But you can see here, east central Missouri, southern half of Illinois, southern Indiana, a good chunk of Kentucky, even the portions of southern Ohio, and possibly clipping northern Tennessee. Then again, there's going to be plenty of time for changes out there, but really the malls have been getting into a better agreement over the past couple of days. So it's definitely a sub to really keep an eye on over the next couple of days. But anyways, guys, that's all for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you do like my channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notifications so you never miss an upload. If you've got some questions about this, put in the comment section down below. I just got some questions, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye and have a good day.